Okay, and I'm just going to mute everybody now. So welcome along everybody to today's meeting. It's a forum meeting. I'll explain a little bit more about that as we get into the agenda for today. And my name's Barbara Dancer. I'm a committee member of BCYT, that's the British Council for Yoga Therapy. And we're an organisation that collectively sets standards for yoga therapy training in the UK and then accreditation of that training. So today, the aim of the meeting is to bring yoga therapists together to look at what part we can play in the coronavirus pandemic. And this is the biggest health challenge that any of us have experienced. So what I'd like us to do is to please take a few moments as we start off to take some breaths and to direct your thoughts to our purpose for today's meeting. So let's do that. Have a moment where you just settle yourself and get ready. Perhaps prepare yourself for the time ahead. Thank you, and welcome along to the meeting, and welcome along to yoga therapists, and welcome along to yoga teachers who might be also interested in therapy, and welcome along to others that just have an interest in yoga therapy. Let me tell you about what's going to be happening in the meeting today. So this is our meeting today. In a moment, Nikki Jackson, who's a yoga therapist and yoga therapy trainer, is going to be talking to us about her experience of COVID and long COVID. And then I'm going to present an overview on long COVID and ideas on symptoms and mechanisms. Then we've got a breakout group session where we'll talk about long COVID and similar conditions in our breakout groups. And then some period of time where we've got some feedback from the breakout groups. And then Penny Roberts, who's Vice Chair of British Council for Yoga Therapy, is going to talk about the need for a professional association in the UK to promote and support the work of yoga therapists. Okay, so let's start off, and I'm going to stop sharing the screen. I'm going to introduce Nikki Jackson. So Nikki, if you'd like to unmute yourself when you're ready and tell us about COVID, long COVID from your personal experience.
Okay, so thank you, Barbara, and hello, everybody. Yes, I'm going to spend the next sort of 20 minutes or so just explaining my experience of COVID and you know, what yoga therapy practices I used. My story is not unusual at all, but you know, it gives the context of this event and helps us to sort of explore. So before I begin with my background history to long haul COVID, I just thought it'd be really useful for us to spend just a few moments sitting in a really good posture. So I'm going to invite you to find your seat, and I'm just going to move back a little so you can see me. Can everybody hear me, by the way? Can you put your thumbs up if you can hear me? Excellent. Okay, now the reason that I just want to spend a few moments in finding our seat is because I found it really important moment to moment to re-find my seat. And that's because, as we all know, long haul and COVID short term as well, is all about, mainly has been about breathing difficulties, or that has been the focus. So, a posture that really does open the lungs, but also this fatigue. And we all know that when we get tired, or we see people tired, the posture will slump. It doesn't help the breathing. And of course, it's mood as well. Once you slump, then the head goes down, the eyes go down, and it's all a bit hopeless. So taking the seat was an expression that I used for myself very often. It comes from the Sangha group that I've very much been involved with. So the first thing to do is to find your sitting bones, wriggle around, whether that's directly onto the floor or sitting on a cushion or a block. And the sitting bones are the roots. So the roots of the posture, connecting in with the earth. And this is really, has been really beneficial for me to realize that I have this connection with the earth, and that the earth is supporting me. And the posture becomes a little bit more like a mountain, not a mountain, sorry, like a tree or a plant, very much rooted, connected with the earth, but at the same time growing up in towards the sunlight. So something much more brighter and hopeful, the Om Mani Padme Hum aspect of the posture. So just make sure you lift up the belly button, created a bit more space for the abdominal organs to spread out, and some space between the lower vertebra, space between the ribs, lift the chest bone, space between the middle vertebra, and lifting up the collarbones. There's plenty of space around the heart, so it's more receptive and open, and the lungs can spread out inside. And for me, this created a much more sunnier, more hopeful posture. And then I would just very gently sway from side to side. So let's just explore that a little. Closing the eyes and just reminding ourselves now of the water element inside the body. So of course we are made up of 70% water, just reminding ourselves, or as I remember it, reminding myself that nothing is forever, everything flows. And freeing up as well the organs inside, that they're not so held and contained by the virus, that there is a sense of flow, and also realizing of where any blockages are. The streams of fluid inside the body, if there's any debris there, what is it like? So an opportunity to explore. And then one of the fundamental practices that I've used repeatedly, probably 2 or 3 times a day, is what I know as Kunye yoga. So that's self-massage, comes from the Tibetan healing practices that I know. So just breathe in, take the arms out to the side. As you breathe out, rubbing your hands. And sometimes there was a message that I wanted to bring into my hands. That message might be, calm, it might be energized, depending on how I was feeling. And I then massage that message, first of all, into the facial muscles, and just kind of bringing this sense of calm, but also with kindness and compassion. So it's an embodied little practice, initial practice. And then around the neck, and particularly the throat, so that the throat remained open, remained relaxed, for facilitating easier breathing. And then the upper corner of the lung can get particularly congested, as we know. So spending a bit of time there, and then down the shoulder and arm, all of this with compassion and bringing this sense of kindness. It really needed to come into my practice as I was dealing with the uncertainty of the COVID symptoms. Abdominal organs, kidneys, you'll learn how those affected my body so much in a moment. And then of course down the legs or any other part of the body. And then just coming back to the posture, realigning, I use Dhyana Mudra a lot, right hand on top of left tip of the thumbs together. Very calming, very centering, and very kind. And then just for a few moments, coming to the breath, remember the importance of nasal breathing. And just creating this kind of wave-like motion of the breath inside. Creating a sense of pacing, samyam. And just realizing the quality, the energizing quality of the inhalations. And the calming quality of the exhalations, where patience, what I know as Kanti, comes into the practice. Okay, and then as the last part of this just initial seated practice is to smile. And we all know the benefits, the physiological benefits of the smile, lifting the corners of the mouth, maybe bringing a smile inside the mouth from one ear to the other, and slightly lifting the eyes and the eyebrows, creating a smile inside the eyes. It's not a cheesy smile at all. It's just this smile of kind of contentment in the moment. And that held me very much when there was a lot of fear and uncertainty. Okay, so just have a little bit of a wriggle, something I do so many times a day, just wriggling the spine, the shoulders and so on. And I just come now to a little bit of background history. So I'm just going to get a bit closer to the camera so you can see. Okay, so I first experienced symptoms back in mid-April. At that stage, I was really quite busy setting up a class timetable online and, supporting my individual clients online. I was very much unfocused on myself and kind of flying the flag of, I can take care of everybody needs support. And there were a lot of people, very lonely, very afraid. And I just launched into that, I can do this, I'm healthy. My symptoms were initially simply a dry cough, a slight temperature, but nothing very much. Sorry, I was just looking at that message at the same time. So I was also particularly healthy at that stage because I'd very fortunately only just come back. I think it was 4.5 weeks prior to that from the Himalayas on a Tibetan healing course. So I felt extremely well. So it was unusual to sort of get this dry cough and so on. The only person living in the household at that time was my youngest son, who'd come back from Falmouth. And I'm saying it like this because it's Cornwall, healthy air. We know they've got small amounts of COVID there now. Falmouth University. So he'd been back about 10 days. I don't think I caught it from him. I think I caught it from a neighbour, a direct neighbour who'd had it confirmed with a test. We thought that period the 14 days had gone, and they asked to borrow my lawnmower. So I think it probably was that handle contact. I thought about having a test. I tried to have a test, but it was extremely difficult to get hold of. And I actually felt, I've got this, I can handle this. I'm a yoga therapist and teacher. I know what to do. So we isolated, and I managed it from having plenty of rest in the afternoon in the garden, those sunny days. I was teaching in the morning online, but these were very gentle sessions, a lot of breathing practices, a lot of meditation, which I personally also found quite useful as reminders for me. I was also part of a really supportive Sangha, and that helped alleviate some of the fears in the morning practice. The pranayama practice I was doing was the samavriti, otherwise known as the Durga breathing or the square breathing, energizing, you know, as I inhale, and just calming, because it was still a bit unnerving, still a bit uncertain on the exhalations. Santosha is a word that comes to mind. I very much adopted this sense of acceptance. There was nothing I could do. It was part of life. It was part of everybody's life. And that probably the best thing to do was to remain calm and to listen to my body, just adjust as and when I needed to. I will say that I was also unaware that I was practicing what I know as moha, which is delusion. I felt that the 35 years of yoga practice and certainly 30 odd years of yoga teaching and therapy, that I'd be fine. I studied it so much and I knew everything, sort of. However, 3 or 4 weeks after the first symptoms, things began to take a turn and breathing difficulties really set in, which was unusual. I can remember one day when I was very tired, I sat back into the sofa. I don't know if you can see me, but just sort of slumped as you do when you're tired. And I remember really struggling to breathe and feeling quite panicked. And, you know, luckily it's very inherent in me and my practice. The first thing I did, which is why I emphasized it at the beginning, was to find my seat, to find my posture, to open the airways. You know, to then establish a better breathing pattern. And instead of this sort of, you know, I can't breathe, or I was kind of here, I can't breathe, which was closing the throat in this fight and flight reaction in the chest. I was lucky because I've got these tools, you've all got these tools to hand. The anatomy of breathing is a really useful practice that I use often, and that's simply, I know it as simply reminding ourselves that the chest expands, the diaphragm moves down, the belly swells out, there's a bit of tilting in the pelvis, tilting back as you inhale, and then, you know, reversing all of that as you exhale, so that there was some, I'll go back a little bit, there was some movement coming in, not only into the body, but, you know, into the lung, into the structure of the body, but also into the lungs. So I remember doing that at the time, and have, you know, adopted it quite a few times when I faced breathing difficulties since. Advasana, which is the opposite of Shavasana, which some of you will know, probably all of you, lying on your belly for relaxation. I made sure that the Yoga Nidra was to hand quite a lot, but always in Advasana. And the reason being is that it's spread out the back of my lungs, where of course there's more space than in the front of the lungs. And I use that a lot for people as well that I've worked with COVID. So at that stage I rang 111, not in a panic, but that I really felt I needed to register myself as a statistic for research, but also there was a bit of, you know, perhaps they can tell me something that I ought to know. I have to say they didn't. I didn't find it particularly helpful, but I registered myself as a statistic. So then, and I can't really remember how long, but I then started to develop backache. And that was strange. I'd never suffered from any back issues. Thought maybe I'd twisted somehow or slept awkwardly. But of course it was kidneys. The virus had then traveled and moved into my kidneys, which has actually been a vulnerable area in the past. Not severe, but whenever I travel, I really do suffer from kidney imbalance. So the sort of practices that I was doing then, lots of pelvic floor circles, massages, Jatara Paritanasana, the spinal twists, what I know is Majjarayasana, which is, you know, lots of cat, just gentle massaging in this kind of kidney area. The Sapana Asana, which is the hair pose, that was very useful as well, to facilitate deeper breathing, and massage the abdominal organs, so around the kidneys. And if anybody's not sure about Sapana Asana, I can explain that at the end if you want to know it. I did ring the GP at that stage, just to check in, and he was very, okay, I've got that message. He was very adamant that really it wasn't much point in me coming in. I seemed to have a handle on this, and that the tests weren't very conclusive at the moment. And for my symptoms, he was 90% sure that I had it, and do get back to him if anything changed. So I was happy with that, managed it. I then started getting gastro problems, gut problems. It obviously traveled around the body, and that was manifested in bloating and difficulty digesting food. I've got I would assume, a very good diet. I've always felt it's pretty good. So this was odd. At that stage, I went back to the doctor, a different doctor this time, who felt I should come in and have some tests on for bowel cancer, which, you know, was not particularly helpful, but we went through that whole process of tests and whatever. But again, conclusive, no, this is COVID. And I think that that particular doctor was exploring it just as much as I was at that stage. Nali was very helpful, the belly massage, the abdominal massage for me. Being hydrated, not only just drinking lots of water, but actually this whole practice of the water element inside. And as I said, you know, at the beginning, just reminding myself of the fluidity inside the body was actually quite helpful for the digestive system as well. And lots of, you know, abdominal work, opening the nadis and just creating this flow, again, the water element. Where are we? So yeah, the next symptom, of course, was the fatigue. Really, really unusual. There was one day when, and there were good days, bad days. There was one particular day when I felt good and went for a very short walk. Walking has been amazing for me. And I had to phone my son to come and pick me up, because I really felt, just like when I felt that gasping, that I'd reached that limit. There was no more steps on that walk to take. And that's very unusual. I've done a lot of mountaineering. I do a lot of very long hikes. So to be, you know, reach that point was very, very odd. Myalgia, a lot of muscle pain. I queried, is this the menopause coming back? But it was different. And for that, did again a lot of the massaging muscles, you know, very much an embodied practice, kindness towards them. There was a lot of underlying fear that perhaps I haven't acknowledged quite as much, of chronic fatigue. There was a lot going around in the press about long haulers developing chronic fatigue. And, you know, this is obviously something I needed to really wake up to. And there was this underlying fear. I had a foggy mind. I think, you know, I do quite often anyway, but this was extreme. And poor concentration, poor short memory. The anxiety, I'd like to think that I was managing it with all of my kind of, you know, yogic trainings and so on. But there was certainly, how long is this going to go on for? I don't understand it. I was very uncertain. Why is it me? And there was an ego in there. You know, I'm a yoga therapist, as I've said before. You know, this shouldn't be happening to me! Exclamation mark, exclamation mark. So just to reiterate, the management at that stage was rest, 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 and more rest. That is what really helped me more than anything. Samyam pacing, really, really helpful, not to sort of fly the flag and, you know, helping everybody else. This was my time to pace myself well. And of course, this came from the breath. There's a lovely breathing practice that involved inhalations is like the springtime. The rest afterwards is like summer, where we relax. The exhalation is like autumn, where we let go. And then the rest after the exhalation is like winter, when we have a deep rest. I'm very, very keen on connections with nature. So that kind of analogy of the seasons with breathing has really helped me. And of course, being with nature herself, Gaia. Very, very helpful. I felt very held by nature. I've done a lot of mindfulness in nature, you know, courses and trainings. And I would like to say that, you know, ultimately it wasn't really until September, so this was mid-April until September, that I felt I'd released the symptoms of COVID, or certainly most of them, or my relationship with it, by swimming in the sea in Cornwall. I managed to take a couple of trips in the summer, but certainly in September, I really felt that, you know, held by the waves, just very gentle swimming, but a lot of swimming for me was really helpful. So we've got a few minutes. I'd just like to show you a practice that I found very nurturing and helpful from the breathing point of view, and it's the hugging breath. The qualities of the hugging breath is self-compassion. You're giving yourself a hug. There's a lot of opening in the chest, so we can kind of let a bit more sunshine in, which is helpful. And yeah, so I'm going to stand now and invite you to stand as well. Can everybody see me at this point? I don't know whether I can become speaker. Anyway, standing. And just finding your standing posture. Again, lifting up the belly button, chest bone, collarbones, crown of the head. So you're moving up towards the light. You're going to breathe in and just float the arms up to shoulder height. Soft shoulders, elbows slightly bent. And we're just going to take a little bit of a flow through the arms. The water element is inside the arms, inside the shoulder joints. This is on the rest. And then when you exhale, bringing the right arm on top of the left and give yourself a hug. Tuck your chin in towards the chest bone, close your eyes and rock your elbows from side to side. You'll feel that you're gently stretching the back of the lungs, so you're opening in the lungs, facilitating deeper breathing. But this nurturing self-compassion element, kindness coming in towards yourself and your body. You can then breathe in, lift the elbows up, bring in the sunshine into the heart area, into the lungs, and then breathing out, bringing the arms back down again. And again, breathing in, floating the arms up. Remember, it's nasal breathing. And then this flow, the water element inside the arms, inside the shoulders. And then breathing out, the left arm flowing on top of the right arm. Tuck the chin in. And just bring the elbows slightly forwards and rock from side to side. Enjoy this easing in the back of the lungs and this nurturing kindness, compassion element towards yourself. Breathing in, lift up the elbows, opening the chest, bring in the sunshine, and breathing out as you bring the arms back down. Okay, good. So how are we doing for time? Yeah, we can do 2 more rounds. So breathe in, take the arms up, have a little bit of a flow. Keep the eyes closed so you are embodied. Breathe out, right arm on top of left. And just enjoy giving yourself a nurturing hug. Breathing in when you're ready, sunshine, and breathing out. And I'll just leave you to do the last one in your own time. Lovely. So if you come back, we've just got a couple of minutes left. So I just want to finish off by saying what I have learnt. And I would say humility with a capital H. To respect the message that COVID-19 is sending or was sending me. And, you know, there are opportunities to make changes when something like this happens. We all know this. But I think that was a big message for me, and I needed to, you know, be humble in that. Not trying to fix it or fight it, and not trying to have the upper hand on it either. So humility was a big word. I've already mentioned acceptance, santosha, listening to the body and adjusting as and when I needed to as it traveled around the body. Pacing, samyam, practice what I preach, not taking on too much, and absorbing samyam pacing deep down in the body, in the cells, in the organs and systems. Self-kindness and compassion, a lot of hand on the heart, or, you know, when it was gastro issues, hand on the belly. But, you know, really tending to the self as much as possible. And yawning in the Slack groups, which is the COVID support groups. There was recently a lot of people saying that when they got COVID, they weren't yawning. And yawning has always been a practice that I give people. So yeah, I began to yawn a lot. So, you know, bringing more oxygen back into the body. And then finally, listening to nature, being held by nature, and just helping the senses to awaken. So that's me. I think do we have 1 minute, Barbara, or is that just about limit?
Well, I think it might be a good idea now to ask if anybody's got any burning questions. We've got a little bit of time, so I think the way to do this is probably to stick up your hand or put something in the chat box, and we've got time perhaps to ask Nikki a couple of questions.
Okay, there was one that came up. Ooh, how am I now? I would say I'm fine. I really am fine. You know, living a pace, really listening to that message and that experience. I'm pacing myself much better than I used to, and I would say that it's really helped. You know, I'm perhaps better than I would have been otherwise.
Great. And then we've got a question from Jaya Butler. You mentioned about the kidneys, the massage.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, you know, just as I was saying, as we did at the beginning, just lots of just massaging, breathing into the kidneys as well. So that I always think the hand on that part of the body, you know, begins that process of nurturing. So, and connecting. So, you know, hand on the kidneys and taking the breath there, and just doing lots of pelvic rocks. That was helpful. You know, whether that's on all fours, whether it's lying down, getting the nadis opening around that whole area for the kidneys. And the chiri, what I know is chiri kriya. Was that the question? Maybe it's this one that I know is chiri kriya. So you know, breathing in and then, you know, really squeezing the belly in towards the spine. So you've got this sort of squeeze release going on in the abdominal organs. So this was helpful for the the gut issues, as well as the kidneys, the squeeze release. And spinal twists, as I recall, were really useful for, squeeze release for the kidneys.
And I don't know if you can do this quickly. Rebecca says, hair posture, please.
Oh, yes. Hair posture. I'll try and show you from an angle, if you can see. So I'm sitting on my heels. You can get people to place a cushion here. The deeper hair, which is the one I used, is elbows are in front of the knees and the lower arms are parallel. Can you see me? I'm not sure you can.
Yeah, that's great.
I'll go back a little bit. So the elbows are in front of the knees are out to the side, so your belly can just kind of flop in between your knees. Lower arms are parallel, and your elbows, your shoulders are in line with your elbows, so it's a right angle with your arms. And you'll find in this posture, if you look down at the floor, that you encourage deep abdominal breaths, and you know that because the belly will really swell out as you inhale and really release as you exhale. And again, you've got this sort of squeeze and release going on in the abdominal organs. So as a resting pose and facilitating deeper breathing and massaging the abdominal organs, I found that really useful.
Great. Thanks, Nikki. That's great. Fantastic.
Okay, thank you
for your talk. So if you want to mute yourself, I'm going to, as we move on to the next section, I'm going to end the recording and then restart it. So you will have to just okay that, I think. Oh, Lisa, we'll pick up your question and answer it. We're going to send out some materials. So if that's all right, we'll answer it kind of with the material that's being sent out. So